seems to me there's been an enormous institutional failure among the media in general, but particularly with science writers. And this is the biggest science story of the decade, if not the last 50 years. So you would think every science writer would be jumping on it. Yet almost none of them have, at least none of the science writers on the organized major media have done so. And I think part of the problem is that much of their life is simply conveying the wisdom of scientists to the unwashed masses. It's reporting on alleged cures for cancer or advances in this, that, or the other. So they sort of slip into the rut of being basically unpaid PR agents for the scientific community. And newspapers like to publish this stuff because it's sort of good news, offsetting the usual fare of massacres and murders. but the science writers have kind of forgotten that it's not their job just to report advances. It's their job also to look at things that scientists don't want them to look at the structure of the scientific community, how it gets money, how it misspends some of it, how fraud and deceit continue at high levels in science when they shouldn't be. None of that do they do. And because of this mindset, I think that's one of the reasons why they have failed in their duty to the public so badly in this particular case.
It sort of comes down to Trump again, it seems to me, because Trump was the one, of course, of the zillion different things he said about this, all of which are mutually contradictory in general. But when he says it's China, it's a China virus, and everybody with a college degree in America winces and their eyes roll back into the back of their heads, and they identify this as xenophobia, as a sort of racism. They're much more concerned about the possibility that calling it a China virus is going to lead to hate crimes than they are that this totalitarian regime has accidentally created a lethal toxin for the entire planet, because they can't give Trump any credit. If they were to say this is a legitimate avenue of inquiry, it would mean that Trump was not wrong about everything, that every now and again the man actually did get things right.
I think that's Trump's statements are definitely what helped or even started the polarization of this issue, which seems to be terribly unfortunate. It should be a factual matter as to how the virus arose. But it seems to me such a juvenile attitude that obviously has prevailed in newsrooms, that whatever Trump said is wrong. I mean, couldn't they sort of step their game up one level and say, it doesn't matter what Trump said one way or the other. Let's look at the facts and decide for ourselves. No one did.
That's the story of the American media of the last 5 years, I'm afraid. It's just not that curious. And it's more engaged in protecting certain elements of conventional wisdom than it is in actually challenging them hard. I mean, to be honest, when I read, this is not a subject that has really interested me until quite recently. I didn't care really where it came from. I thought the job is to figure out how to stop it and all the rest of it. And I also thought a little bit, South Park had what was it, Randy screwing a pangolin that created COVID-19. So there was some kind of kooky shit going around it about it being, from an animal or something. And then I put it out of my head. Now, when I read your tract, let's call it that, it's the first time I've ever been aware that there was we found nothing in the environment that could have led to this. It's the first time I've heard of a furin cleavage site. It's the first time I've heard that this virus has a limited genetic diversity, which is not that common amongst viruses that emerge in the wild. In fact, it's kind of streamlined. And that it has this extraordinarily convenient little thing put in the middle of it that just makes it able to be contagious to humans.
Right.
Why do I not know these things? I mean, maybe I've been not reading closely enough, but I don't remember a big piece taking me down the path that your little tract did.
Well, you're absolutely right. There's been very little coverage of this issue in the mainstream press. Almost all the coverage has been dictated by the little group of virologists who are determined to to cover up the true origins of the virus, or at least to prevent discussion of them.